The Underdark is an extensive network of subterranean caves, caverns, and tunnels beneath the surface of Abertoril. It isn't a single vast cavern beneath the surface. It consists of numerous, expansive networks of caverns and caves. Traveling from one end of the Underdark to the other isn't always feasible due to its segmented nature. The Underdark is divided into several domains akin to continents above ground. While travel within a domain is possible, connections between separate domains are sparse. The primary domains include the Buried Realms, Darklands, Deep Wastes, Earthroot, Glimmersea, Great Byrenden, Northdark, and Old Shanatar. The underground terrain of the Underdark varies from narrow subterranean fissures, nearly impassable for adventurers, to more conventional caves and caverns. Additionally, there are extensive bodies of deep water where coral caves flourish, blocks of ice inhabited by creatures, and cavern-like spaces within masses of fungus or bone supported by magical force bubbles. This diverse terrain constantly shifts, much like the surface of Toril. Some regions undergo continuous transformation due to underground magma rivers or the draining of subterranean lakes caused by fissures in the rock resulting from earthquakes. Consequently, maps of the Underdark are highly unreliable. It represents an environment starkly different from the surface world, rendering traversing it a perilous endeavor. Comparable to journeying through a desert, exploration of this area demands thorough preparation. Illumination within the Underdark is sparse, relying on occasional luminescent rocks or fungi. Vast stretches lack sustenance, requiring well-stocked provisions for venturing into uncharted subterranean territories. The absence of light, coupled with an eerie silence reminiscent of a tomb, renders traveling through the Underdark a venture reserved for the stout-hearted. Even seasoned adventurers find themselves unsettled by the nerve-wracking stillness. Similar to deep dungeons, the air within the Underdark can become stagnant and potentially toxic. It may harbor explosive gases from subterranean volcanic activity or other lethal gases seeping from deep cracks in the rock. These noxious fumes can accumulate in isolated sections of tunnels and caves, sometimes trapped by siphon-like passages containing water. Underground temperatures vary depending on depth and proximity to thermal sources. In most regions, the temperature remains relatively stable and moderate throughout the year, typically damp or chilly. Underground water is notably cold, posing a risk of hypothermia. The underground ecosystem hosts a diverse array of plant and animal life, mirroring that found on the surface. From small insects to formidable creatures like hook horrors and shadow dragons, the depths harbor a plethora of life. Plant life, unable to harness sunlight for energy, assumes peculiar forms, adapted to subterranean existence. Many fungi thrive underground, relying on absorbing Faerzress for sustenance, as they cannot digest conventional nutrients most of the time. Bibberbangs represent one of the more perilous growths abundant in the Underdark. Upon approaching them, they swell ominously, and any further proximity or interaction triggers a violent explosion. Often clustered closely together, disturbing a single bibberbang can set off a destructive chain reaction. Upon detonation, they emit noxious clouds of poison that persist for a significant duration. Magivores, residing in the Underdark, blur the distinction between plant and coral life. They propagate by releasing airborne seed spores to colonize new territories, with a preference for regions rich in Faerzress, especially those altered by rituals or spells. Both magivores and their seeds serve as sustenance for denizens of the Underdark, particularly lower life forms. Due to their preference for feeding on Faerzress, the presence of magivores often indicate areas of heightened Faerzress concentration. Faerzress is a magical energy unique to the Underdark, a vestige of high magic that has significantly influenced its formation. It disrupts the casting of teleportation and divination spells. Regions with high concentrations of Faerzress exhibit physical manifestations, ranging from subtle fluctuations in temperature to visibly luminous rock formations. The term derives from Faer, magic, and Zress, to hold dominance or remain in force, collectively signifying an enduring magic. The primary purpose of this dominating magic is to keep the drow within the Underdark. It plays a crucial role in urban planning. Drow strategically choose locations with potent Faerzress to establish cities and outposts, thus thwarting attempts at scrying or teleportation into their domains. Additionally, it is utilized by them for the crafting of magical artifacts. It is inferred that in ancient times, the forces of Arvindar not only obliterated Maeritar, but also purportedly altered the physiques of the Drow, creating Faerzress to confine them beneath the earth. This confinement was achieved by impeding their escape through magical means and instilling in them a reluctance to return to the surface, as Faerzress seems to exert a compelling force on the Drow. However, Faerzress does predate the descent of the Drow and exists during events depicted by the Kira, dating back to the formation of the Underdark itself. It seems perhaps then that the physical alterations of the Drow by Corellon's magic instead utilized the existing phenomenon to keep the Drow in the Underdark. Faerzress possesses the ability to disrupt magic and spellcasting in unpredictable manners, akin to wild magic. While knowledge of it among surface dwellers remains limited, it is recognized to primarily affect divination and conjuration spells, rendering magical teleportation within the Underdark a hazardous endeavor. Certain regions emit stronger Faerzress emanations than others. Rituals can be performed to manipulate the concentration of Faerzress in a given area or to influence a localized pocket of it, though such practices frequently draw unwanted attention from denizens of the Underdark sensitive to radiation. The primary Underdark regions extend beneath the trackless sea, stretching between the continents of Maztica and Faerun. Ancient dwarven lore recounts a monumental conflict between the dwarves and the Drow, which unfolded beneath the trackless sea. The conflict was quelled by Drow sorcery, which ignited fires so intense that they liquefied rock and inundated the section of the Underdark connecting dwarves and Drow dwelling in the Maztican Underdark with their eastern brethren. Known as the Rock Fire, this catastrophe occurred many generations before Am's discovery of the Maztican continent. It was triggered by the uncontrolled magic of dark fire wielded by the Drow, rendering the Underdark beneath Maztica uninhabitable, filled with toxic gas and molten rock. Over centuries, the dwarves severed from Faerun transformed into desert dwellers, inhabiting shallow caves near the surface of the House of Tezca Desert. They believed the rock fire had eradicated both the Drow and the remaining dwarves. Passages between the two continents in the Underdark became lost legends, fading from memory among Faerun's inhabitants. The perilous landscape is home to a diverse array of hazardous wildlife. Umber hulks are monstrous beings dwelling deep underground, characterized by their 4 eyes and formidable physical attributes, possessing massive claws capable of effortlessly tunneling through rock and armor as resilient as full plate. They pose a significant threat to any encountered opposition. These creatures resemble a hybrid of gorillas and beetles and are equipped with prominent mandibles and mouths filled with rows of sharp triangular teeth. They possess 2 sets of compound eyes situated on the sides of their heads and smaller ape-like eyes on their foreheads. They exhibit considerable bulk, with stout, muscular physiques weighing many times that of a typical humanoid. Renowned for their ability to effortlessly overpower adversaries and tunnel away, collapsing their exits behind them, Umber hulks often leave survivors disoriented and bewildered. Their massive frames are enveloped in chitinous armored plates tougher than steel, which overlay their hair-like feelers. Instead of a traditional nose, they possess a series of gill-like openings in their nearly non-existent necks, possibly hinting at aquatic origins. Due to their broad and heavy build, maneuvering in open spaces proves challenging, resulting in lumbering movements when not navigating their tunnels. Despite their name suggesting otherwise, their hides predominantly exhibit a black hue, with their front typically displaying burnt brown or yellowish-gray tones. Other races commonly perceive Umber hulks as mindless brutes, a misconception that the creatures are content to foster. While not particularly endowed with intelligence, Umber hulks do possess the capacity for rational thought and strategic planning. Typically eschewing complex tactics, magic, numerical superiority, or technology, they rely on sheer force to achieve their objectives. However, when confronted with situations demanding more than brute strength, they demonstrate the intelligence to utilize their earth-shaping abilities to outmaneuver their adversaries. They tend to be solitary, not out of animosity towards one another, but simply because cooperation offers them minimal advantage given their individual strength in handling threats. Preferring subterranean habitats, they avoid surface excursions, harboring a dislike for light. Any nearby beings making eye contact with the Umberhulk's smaller eyes risk having their minds scrambled, resulting in erratic behavior such as aimless wandering, aggressive outbursts, or a state of bewildered confusion. Umberhulks engage in combat solely for the purpose of acquiring material gain, typically driven by the need for sustenance. They prioritize targeting adversaries they perceive as weaker than themselves. Raids on dungeons and settlements serve as their primary method of acquiring food, though they exercise restraint, only dispatching a few foes to allow their food sources time to replenish. Utilizing their feelers, they detect movement in their vicinity, strategically positioning themselves in corridors and other strategic locations to launch surprise attacks. They may also create small openings to assess their options and identify their weakest targets. Following an ambush, Umberhulks employ their disorienting gaze to further confound their adversaries. Should ambush tactics, brute strength, and confusion fail to secure victory, they employ various strategies to escape, retreat, or regroup. These tactics include inducing cave-ins, guiding enemies into dead ends, creating circular paths, initiating floods, collapsing tunnels, or setting up pitfall traps. Umberhulks are primarily solitary creatures, and the existence of a societal structure among them remains uncertain. Rumors suggest the possibility of underground cities composed of intricate web-like tunnels, with some individuals purportedly valuing precious metals as currency. However, not all Umberhulks share this appreciation for precious metals. While they typically lead solitary lives, some may form clusters, typically consisting of mothers and their young. They demonstrate a preference for destroying items they cannot utilize, such as clothing and weapons, while stashing away items of interest within their lairs, safeguarded by rudimentary earth-based traps. Their lairs are expansive caverns adorned with claw marks, likely either from claw maintenance or excavation. They communicate primarily through a crude and harsh language of their own creation, known as Hulkish. This language comprises various hissing sounds, grunting noises, and gestures, supplemented by eye, mouth, and mandible movements. While conveying limited ideas, Hulkish is relatively easy to comprehend, but exceedingly challenging for non-Umberhulks to replicate. Some individuals may also possess the ability to speak Common, while others understand Deep Speech. Umberhulks maintain strained relations with most other races, and are often enslaved by members of them. Neogi commonly capture and enslave them, employing young Umberhulks as the initial servants for their hatchlings. Additionally, Illithids dominate Umberhulks for use as brute muscle, while human spellcasters may also enslave them. Grimlocks and cave-dwelling orcs occasionally capture them as hunting beasts. Some Umberhulks willingly serve other evil races in roles such as guards, warriors, or laborers, provided the tasks do not require them to venture above ground or pose significant risk to their lives. Particularly formidable specimens may even find employment under dragons, often serving as guard animals due to their presence when adequately fed during their youth. However, they are equally prone to turning on their masters for any reason, or even without provocation. Upon death, Umberhulks are frequently harvested by other races, such as kobolds and goblins, who use their hides to craft shields, and their mandibles to fashion maces. Spellcasters may also harvest their eyes for potion brewing. Despite their utility, Umberhulks are generally despised by most subterranean races, not only for their predatory behavior, but also for indirectly triggering some of the worst conflicts in the Underdark. Their propensity for tunneling near ore veins inadvertently connects otherwise isolated creatures, often sparking warfare over newly exposed resources. The dwarven saying, "chasing an Umberhulk," refers to the prospector's tactic of tracking the trail left by an Umberhulk in the hopes of discovering such exposed minerals. This strategy is considered risky but potentially lucrative, offering substantial rewards if luck is on one side. Umberhulks primarily prey on underground creatures such as purple worms and onkegs, but also enjoy humanoid flesh. Although rumors suggest they digest precious metals for dietary purposes, this is speculation. Their teeth are not utilized in combat, serving solely for the purpose of chewing through their prey. Some Umberhulk caves host various fungi and lichen, although these are not consumed by the Umberhulks themselves. Instead, the plant matter attracts large insects permitted by the Umber hulks to enter their layers for feeding purposes. Male and female Umber hulks are nearly indistinguishable to outsiders. Males have a lifespan of approximately 50 years, while females live for around 75 years. Females are less common than males, with males often defending them, potentially at the cost of their own lives. After mating, males typically depart, leaving the females to give birth to live young, typically producing 1 to 3 hulklings. Females create a nursery in a hollowed-out cavern to care for their offspring, who quickly develop their characteristic abilities. Within 2 years, hulklings are capable of accompanying their mother on hunting expeditions. After a few months, they reach maturity and live independently. During infancy, mothers hunt extensively to feed their offspring, often initiating a new litter once the young are grown. Occasionally, an exceptionally long-lived Umber hulk may evolve into a truly horrid Umber hulk, a massive, monstrous creature. Despite their advanced age, these formidable hulks remain intelligent and possess heightened abilities in discerning the intentions of others. Umber Ravagers, smaller counterparts of the standard Umber hulk, inhabit the upper layers of the earth and are more likely to be encountered by those outside of the Underdark. These creatures are often found working in groups, as they possess less power and fewer dazing abilities compared to their larger kin. In the Abyss, a variant species known as the Abyssal Hulk exists. Unlike the standard Umber hulk found in the Prime Material, Abyssal hulks possess acidic blood, which they can expel at their enemies. Additionally, their gaze has a psychic quality capable of inducing madness in others and temporarily charming them into attacking their allies. Abyssal hulks can be found across various layers of the abyss, burrowing through the terrain and occasionally creating new passages. Many of these creatures have been gathered by the minions of the demon lord Yenogu, who force them into service as guardians and sentinels. These abyssal hulks lie in wait beneath the ground along well-traveled paths in the abyss, ready to ambush unsuspecting travelers. According to legend, the origins of abyssal hulks trace back to early Umber hulks that delved so deeply that they inadvertently crossed into other planes, such as the elemental chaos, and discovered the abyss as a fertile hunting ground. While many perished in these excursions, those that survived and feasted upon the flesh of demons gradually underwent a transformative process over time. Historical accounts once described Umber hulks as magically engineered mutants, although the identities of their creators have long been lost to history. Contrary to these reports, some early writings suggest that Umber hulks are among the oldest beings in existence, predating even the Dawn War. These sages believe that they emerged from the primal matter of the universe before the completion of the Primordial's crafting. Umber hulks have demonstrated the capacity for training, as evidenced by their utilization in the Blade Kingdoms and the city of Sumbria. In 1217, they were deployed beneath the palace of the Medicis as one of their anti-theft measures. During the late 14th century, a yellow carapace Umber hulk serves as a bouncer at the underground tavern known as Talon Dance in the city of Obel. It is likely that the creature is magically dominated by the tavern's wizard proprietor. The Purple Worm is a colossal subterranean creature resembling an immense, peculiar earthworm. It possesses a massive body covered in dark, purple chitinous plates, featuring a mouth brimming with teeth at one end and a venomous stinger on the other. A fully grown purple worm is massive, approximately the size and weight of a dragon. Its locomotion is facilitated by rhythmic concentrations and expansions of its body, enabling it to achieve sudden bursts of speed. During an attack, a purple worm coils into a formidable mass. From this position, it extends its head and tail to bite, seize, and sting anything within a radius around its body. Within its mouth, the purple worm can effortlessly swallow creatures whole, subjecting them to crushing and digestion by stomach acids they fail to escape by cutting their way out or employing magic. The venom delivered by its tail stinger is exceptionally potent, inducing debilitating effects. They exhibit exceptional swimming abilities and possess tremor sense, allowing them to detect any disturbances in contact with the ground. Their eggs are approximately the size of a halfling, appearing as silvery spheres encased in extremely tough shells. They are often clustered together in groups of 6 by purple worms, who suspend them from their chamber walls using strands of adhesive saliva. They are voracious predators and scavengers, consuming any organic matter they encounter without discrimination. They possess the ability to swallow beings as large as humans or horses whole. As they tunnel through the earth, they ingest significant quantities of soil and rock material, which they continuously break down and excrete. In mineral-rich environments, they may leave behind castings containing unrefined ores, precious metals, and gemstones. Some adventurers actively seek out the carcasses or castings of purple worms in search of these valuable treasures. They are considered to have animal-level intelligence and are attracted to loud noises sensed underground as they forage for food. They dwell under the ground until they emerge suddenly to launch attacks. They possess the ability to gnaw through solid rock while hunting for prey, thus carving out numerous tunnels in the Underdark. Clusters of them in areas abundant with food can construct intricate tunnel systems. Fortunately, they seldom return to these passages, rendering them advantageous routes. In the Underdark, purple worms pose a natural threat to all inhabitants, leading drow, dwergar, and elithids to maintain magical protections against them. They prefer solitude, but frequently surface in mountainous and rocky regions. They lay their eggs in regions sometimes referred to as nurseries. Occasionally, these locations are inhabited by other creatures that establish a symbiotic relationship with the worms, lurking within the nurseries to prey on those seeking their valuable eggs, thus safeguarding them. Giant spiders and other creatures with no direct interest in the eggs often fulfill this role. Fomorian giants occasionally forge a connection with the purple worms and become caretakers of egg clusters. Wizards highly value purple worm eggs for their roles in various arcane rituals. Rumors circulate in the Underdark about purple worms with two heads, believed to result from mutations caused by the Faerzress. Various types of purple worms inhabit specific environments, such as lakes or desert plains. In the desert, purple worms are native to the sandy and salty expanses of Kalim Shan. Similar to thunder herders, this species typically travels in groups. They tend to follow disturbances caused by Memnon's manifestations, as these disruptions loosen the soil. There are no known instances of them tunneling beneath the tradeway, as whatever magical protection shields it also prevents their interference. The mottled variant is an aquatic subspecies of purple worm. They share many characteristics of standard purple worms, but are commonly found in shallow, mucky water bottoms. Occasionally, they surface in search of prey. Gricks are large worm-like creatures that dwell away from sunlight. Their heads consist of a sharp beak surrounded by 4 tentacles. An adult Grick's main body measures approximately the size of a humanoid. When including the length of the tentacles, it's considerably larger. Their heads feature a pair of tiny eyes and a snapping beak encircled by large barbed tentacles. The tentacles remain covering the beak unless the Grick is attacking or eating. Their skin is rubbery and uniformly dark with a pale underbelly. Their coloration varies from dark green to blue. Their skin provides effective camouflage in rocky terrain and shadows. They are nearly always hungry and will hunt anything that moves, except for other Gricks. They immediately attack whenever their nest is threatened. They are skilled climbers and can slither up walls with ease. Though they prefer to remain underground or indoors, they will venture into the open if food is scarce. However, they only do so at night to avoid harming their small, sensitive eyes. Gricks prefer to hunt in packs, but can also be found hunting alone. They wait in bushy areas and ambush their prey, utilizing their natural camouflage to remain hidden in rocky terrain. When hunting in packs, they maneuver to outflank their prey wherever possible. Due to their relatively small beaks, they can only take small bites of food. Consequently, they prefer to drag their prey back to their nest once it's unconscious or dead. They lay oblong blue or green eggs about the size of a human fist. Young Gricks, known as wormlings, are edible and sometimes served in the Dale lands, stuffed with rice pilaf and diced celery. Cured and spiced Grick tentacles are also consumed. They can be compelled to serve aberrant creatures such as grells. Because of their constant need to eat, some explorers believe that the most effective way to kill a Grick is to seal it inside its nest and wait for it to starve. In negative 8,170, the ancient dwarven settlement of Alatoran relied on domesticated Gricks for defense. At some point after 1372, the sewers of Waterdeep harbors a small population of Gricks. As of 1491, a goblin named Lupo maintains a pet Grick in Cragmaw Castle. A hook horror, also known as a vulture beak, hacker, or a cave dweller, is a large, bipedal subterranean monstrosity resembling a vulture-like humanoid with bony hooks instead of hands. It is an invertebrate arthropod. It stands almost twice as tall as a normal humanoid and weighs about the same. A hookor has a head resembling a vulture, a neck adorned with crested feathers, and a beetle-like body. Its mottled, gray, chitinous exoskeleton is extremely thick and dense, covered with sharp studs. This exoskeleton can be removed and transformed into tough armor. Instead of hands, paws, or claws, its front limbs are massive, razor-sharp, blade-like gray metallic hooks surrounded by red feathers, which serve as its primary method of combat. Its legs resemble those of a bird, and its head is vulture-shaped, complete with a hooked beak. Its eyes are multifaceted, similar to those of an insect. They are particularly susceptible to diseases and parasites, with a life expectancy of less than 40 years. They need to molt to shed off their hard exoskeletons after growth. Over a period of 2 days, the old exoskeleton flakes off, while a new one forms underneath. For a few days after shedding the old exoskeleton completely, the hookor's new exoskeleton is soft, making it more vulnerable to damage. They have poor eyesight, but their hearing is extremely acute, and they possess a keen sense of smell. In caves, they emit a high-pitched sound that is inaudible to most other creatures. This enables them to use echolocation, similar to the sonar of a bat, to see nearby objects and environments without relying on light. They are also sensitive to light. For reproduction, they lay eggs in a closely guarded central location. The small eggs resemble rocks and are scattered among the actual rocks in the horror's cavern for camouflage. After 6 months, the eggs hatch, producing a small hookor baby. By the end of the first year, it reaches the approximate size of a typical humanoid and reaches full size after 17 years. It remains with its parents for the first year of its life, becoming increasingly independent during the second year, and no longer needing its parents by the third year. It begins seeking a mate at the age of 6. They prefer to ambush their prey from above, often working together as a group. If necessary, they can retreat using their climbing ability. In combat, a hookor uses its clawed arms to trip its opponents. They typically live in family units, consisting of no more than a dozen individuals, in subterranean caves led by the eldest male. They hunt for food in these areas and spend about half their time sleeping. When not threatened, they move sluggishly, enabling them to survive on relatively little food for their size. Hookors are an omnivorous species, although they have a preference for the meat of creatures they can catch. If meat is unavailable, they will consume fungi or lichen. There are rumors suggesting that they particularly enjoy eating the drow. During times of food scarcity, they migrate to other subterranean areas. Some hookor colonies are capable of cultivating their own food. Only when extremely hungry will they turn to foods such as phycomids, shriekers, violet fungi, and zygomes to survive. While such foods are poisonous to most humanoids, a gland in the hookor's abdomen produces a special enzyme that renders them immune to their effects. Additionally, hookors will collect and consume silver or electrum items whenever possible. These items pass through their digestive systems unchanged, albeit with a slight odor when expelled. Hookors possess their own language, communicating through a series of clicks and clacks produced with their exoskeletons. Additionally, they are capable of speaking Undercommon. In their native tongue, communication is gentle and soft when discussing friendship, but becomes loud and frenzied when the topic is food. The bony hooks of hookors are prized by alchemists. A sublimate can be extracted from 3 full-sized hooks, which can then be mixed with certain types of ashes to create an elixir of vigilance. A piercer is a mollusk with a shell resembling a stalactite. It has 2 eye stalks that curl along the shell. Due to their stony shells, piercers are virtually indistinguishable from stalactites unless one notices their eye stalks upon close inspection. Most of their internal organs are located inside the shell, while their mouth and mollusk foot are exposed at the base. They come in a variety of sizes, with the largest reaching about the size of a humanoid. Their eye stalks can detect heat sources from a fair distance, as well as sounds and subtle vibrations. While the soft mantle of a piercer offers minimal protection, it can secrete an acid that deters most predators. They lack sentience. They climb slowly to cave ceilings using their muscular foot, similar to common snails, and can hang upside down from the ceiling indefinitely, using their sucker foot to wait for prey. They are highly sensitive to sound and heat. When they detect motion below them, they release themselves from the ceiling, plummeting to the ground. If successful in impaling a victim, they slowly consume it. However, if unsuccessful, the fall often kills the piercer, cracking and smearing it upon the cavern floor. Some scholars claim that a piercer can slither out of its shell while consuming prey, rendering it highly vulnerable during feeding. After finishing its meal, it must crawl back on its long journey to the ceiling once again. If the movement of potential prey stops for extended periods, the piercer may adjust its position over the prey rather than waiting for it to move underneath. If one piercer manages to slay a victim, several others may fall in an attempt to join in the feeding. Piercers can be found in groups or colonies ranging from 3 to 18 animals and inhabit various subterranean locations, particularly near cave entrances or other high-traffic areas. Rumors exist of much larger colonies of upwards of 100 animals in deeper caverns. Although hermaphroditic, piercers do mate in pairs, crawling back to the cavern floor to perform elaborate mating dances before stretching out of their shells to consummate the process. They are highly vulnerable during this time and lay clutches of about 6 to 8 eggs in cracks in cavern walls or floors. They begin their lives as pointy-tailed slug-like creatures emerging from an egg about the size of a chicken's. A young piercer uses its radulae, or toothed tongue, to feed on fungi and grit and sand. It utilizes these minerals to begin composing its shell after reaching an age of several months. The shell starts as a tiny thin point and develops into a thick, rock-like shell. When a piercer reaches an acceptable shell length, it begins to develop its distinctive eye stalks, which can move backward alongside the shell. It is capable of enduring long periods without food, with some alchemists theorizing that they possess a second stomach. The second stomach secretes a special substance that can preserve food for longer periods than usual, enabling them to store it before fully digesting. They also extract the water they need from their victims. On average, they live about 4 years. The taste of piercer meat resembles that of snails, but with a bitter aftertaste. Eggs and young piercers are not typically sold due to their bad taste. Living in caves and caverns throughout the Underdark, voracious ropers feast on whatever they can catch and seize. Roper eats any creature, from Underdark beasts to adventurers and their gear. A roper has the appearance of a stalagmite or stalactite, which often allows it to attack with surprise. The creatures can move slowly, using thousands of sticky cilia beneath their base. It creeps up cave walls and along stone ceilings, finding the best position from which to attack and ambush. The roper is an evolved, mature form of the piercer, with which it shares its rock-like appearance and hunting tactics. They can hold still for long hours, shutting their single eye to look like nothing more than a mundane formation of rock. Creatures that come too close are surprised when that eye snaps open and sticky tendrils shoot out to seize them. The roper makes horrible guttural sounds as it reels in its struggling victims, drawing them close to the fatal bite of its stony teeth. Ropers can digest anything they eat, with the exception of platinum, gemstones, and magic items, which can sometimes be retrieved from their gizzards after death. A roper's digestive juices are also valuable, fetching a high price from alchemists who use them as solvents. A roper possesses 6 protrusions positioned alongside its body, from which it extends sticky tendrils that adhere to anything they contact. Each tendril emits hair-like extensions that penetrate a creature's flesh, draining its strength, rendering the victim's struggles feeble as the roper pulls it in. If a tendril is severed or damaged, the roper can generate a replacement. A Darkmantle is an octopus-like subterranean creature that camouflages itself as a stalactite. Larger specimens are sometimes referred to as envelopers. They are favored by the drow deity Gawandar and the orc deity Shargas. Resembling an octopus or squid, a Darkmantle has limestone-colored skin and a thick membrane stretched between each of its tentacles, extending about 2/3 of the way to the tips. Part of its body is covered in a stony dorsal shell. When motionless, they closely resemble stalactites, stalagmites, or other rock formations. They possess 8 eye spots, though they are not true eyes. Each tentacle is lined with teeth, and it features a lamprey-like mouth at their intersection. It has a mucus-covered foot muscle at the back of its head, allowing it to cling to walls or ceilings. A typical Darkmantle is slightly shorter than an average humanoid. As they lack bones, pre-adult individuals can squeeze themselves through surprisingly tight spaces. They possess the ability to see in natural darkness, although not with true vision. Their vestigial eyes can only detect light and darkness. They primarily rely on echolocation, similar to that of bats, due to their limited range of blind sight. As a result, they prefer enclosed spaces and darkness over open spaces or sunlight, rarely venturing far from their subterranean homes. The tips of a Darkmantle's tentacles are equipped with sense organs similar to those of taste or smell, allowing them to locate necessary minerals for their shells. They also have excellent hearing, facilitated by tiny pits spaced evenly over their tentacles. They can move akin to snails using their foot, but they can move much faster by utilizing their tentacles as legs, their swiftest form of locomotion. While they possess magical flight that provides lift, they must flap the skin between their tentacles for propulsion, making them rather clumsy flyers. Their magic can only keep them airborne for limited durations. They may occasionally catch a small meal in their mouths while flying, although this is rare. To mimic stalactites, Darkmantles hang from their foot and tightly press their 8 tentacles together to form a point. Alternatively, they can cling to a surface with their tentacles, hanging with their pointed heads downwards. However, their grip with their tentacles is not as secure, as only their muscular foot is sticky. They possess an intelligence comparable to that of dogs, and are occasionally encountered in packs, known as clutches or swarms. They are prey for various cave-dwelling creatures. Their typical defense involves disguising themselves as stones, but they may also employ a combination of ground movement and flight to evade predators tracking them by scent. Aside from the high-pitched sounds used in their natural sonar, they do not vocalize. They can create an aura of unnatural darkness around their bodies, and also change their skin color to blend in with their surroundings. They cling to the ceilings of a cavern, remaining still until prey moves below it. At that point, it drops suddenly and unfurls its mantled tentacles in an attempt to engulf the victim's head while emitting its magical darkness. If successful, the Darkmantle blinds, suffocates, and crushes its prey in one motion. If it misses, the Darkmantle will fly back to the ceiling and try again. They also possess the ability to slash with their tentacles, and due to the teeth covering their tips, this can inflict more damage than anticipated. In the wild, they inhabit the Upper Dark and the Shadowfell. However, in the settlement of Cloaker Haven, they are kept as pets. Shadarkai also are known to keep them as pets. Biologically, they are a magical and highly evolved type of mollusk, and thought to perhaps be a species related to the piercer, or perhaps even an evolved form of it. They are hermaphrodites, possessing both male and female reproductive organs. After mating, each pair lays eggs in clutches of 6 to 8. These eggs are chicken-sized, but resemble stones in color. They do not maintain any relationship with either their mates or their offspring. After approximately 10 days, the eggs hatch, and Darkmantles begin their lives as tiny black grubs resembling slugs. The tiny grubs possess 8 eye spots, with 2 at the front and 3 on each side. They are herbivores, feeding on fungi, mosses, and lichen, using 2 tongues called raduli. Around 7 days into their life, a grub's radula lengthens and splits, resulting in phototentacles that undergo a second splitting. After a third splitting, the creature has developed 8 tentacles. Once the tentacles make up half its body length, the Darkmantle starts growing a shell from its back, composed of minerals consumed during its time as a grub. After several months, the Darkmantle reaches adulthood. Growth usually stops around the size of a halfling, with a lifespan of around 6 years. Beneath its shell, the Darkmantle possesses a statocyst, a specialized organ utilized by mollusks for balance. This aids Darkmantles in maintaining balance when hanging from a wall or ceiling by their foot. They require sleep and hibernate for several months at a time, hanging like stalactites during this period. Unless hibernating, an adult Darkmantle can survive for about 7 days between feedings, obtaining water from deep subterranean pools. Darkmantle eyes can be used instead of bat fur as a material component for the darkness spell. Certain scholars speculate that they originated in the Shadowfell. Others suggest that they evolved from the Piercer. The Underdark hosts numerous decomposers that play a key role in cycling the organic matter within the otherwise stagnant caverns. Oozes constitute a category of creatures primarily resembling amorphous blobs and predominantly inhabit underground environments. This group encompasses slimes, jellies, puddings, and other amorphous beings. Though essentially blind, Oozes compensate with blind sight, enabling them to perceive nearby objects and creatures without relying on sight. Most oozes exude acid from their skin, swiftly dissolving flesh and other materials. They possess a distinctive ability to resist close range and melee attacks by slowly dissolving the wielder's weapon. Numerous types of oozes are present, and their names are frequently interchangeable with jellies and slimes. In the late 1480s, under the guidance of the Pudding King, various oozes were drawn to the deep gnome settlement of Blingenstone. During the early 1490s, an insane deep gnome cultist named the Pudding King began worshipping Jubilex. This deep gnome possessed a natural affinity for oozes, capable of communicating with them and treating them like children. Ostracized by his fellow deep gnomes due to his fascination with oozes, the Pudding King harbored a profound fear of abandonment and solitude. Despite his fractured psyche, he seemed immune to the madness typically induced by demon lords. Rejected by his kin, he wandered into the Underdark, where he encountered two oozes, a black pudding and a gray ooze. He adopted them, treating them as if they were his own offspring. However, one day, the oozes abruptly departed, leaving him overcome with fear of abandonment once more. In his pursuit, he was ensnared by a profound hunger, the influence of Jubilex, the faceless lord. Jubilex revealed in a vision to the Pudding King an oozing nightmare that he interpreted as paradise. Sensing the deep gnome's unique connection to oozes, Jubilex bestowed upon him the power to command them, empowering him to return to Blingenstone and consume everything within it. Taking the black pudding, now known as Princess Ebenmeyer, and the gray ooze, renamed Prince Livid, the Pudding King returned to Blingenstone. He claimed the city's former center of government as his castle and fashioned a throne resembling Jubilex, adorned with green slime matching his throne room. Summoning oozes to aid his endeavor to consume the city, he initiated his conquest. Ultimately, all the factions in the city united against him, and the Pudding King met his demise. A party of adventurers was said to be hired by certain deep gnome factions, having escaped drow slavers of Velkenreave, and delivered the final blow. A black pudding is an ooze resembling a bubbling, heaping pile of thick black goo. They are massive, and while most of them are inky black, some may appear as brown, gray, or even white. In subterranean environments, they typically manifest as dark blobs. Some black puddings that survive for extended periods become known as elder puddings. These elder specimens are significantly larger than their younger counterparts and possess an almost impenetrable outer layer of aged material. They are immune to all damage unless their outer layers are dissolved first by a specific concoction. Black puddings are mindless hunters and scavengers dwelling underground, roaming and absorbing whatever they encounter. Positioned in dungeon hallways like shadows, black puddings lie in wait for unsuspecting prey. When attacking, they seize, grapple, and constrict prey directly into their liquid-like mass. Like other oozes, they secrete a deadly acidic substance that rapidly dissolves weapons, clothing, and organic tissue. Slashed or pierced, a black pudding splits into two smaller puddings, and this process repeats until they are too diminutive and feeble to continue. They consume bone, metal, and wood, leaving only stone behind. Like other oozes, black puddings are drawn to warmth and detect their prey through movement. While they primarily seek living and breathing targets, they will also feed on animal entrails, slime, and mushrooms. They can be found inhabiting shrines and temples dedicated to Gaunadur, the drow deity of oozes. Worshippers of this deity cultivate alliances with black puddings for mutual defense. A gray ooze is a type of ooze that resembles a wet stone or rock. When one of these creatures reaches an exceptionally large capacity, it is known to mildly develop greater intellect. They can corrode metal at a rate comparable to that of a black pudding, although their acids do not eat through stone or wood. They reproduce by breaking small droplets off themselves after a meal, a process called budding, which later grow into great oozes themselves. They possess an innate immunity to magic, as well as severe heat and cold. However, they are vulnerable to any form of lightning. They also have blind sight. When one of these creatures reaches an exceptionally large size, they can develop latent psionics, allowing them to unleash a psychic crush, but in return, they are left vulnerable to retaliation. They are only known to unleash this ability whenever a creature around them uses psionic powers. It is suggested that they develop these psionic abilities as a result of evolving to live near mind flayers. Some predators in the Underdark exhibit a basic level of intelligence and culture. Although they lack a formal civilization, it nonetheless makes them formidable and organized threats. Quaggoths, sometimes referred to as deep bears, are humanoid creatures resembling bears that make their home in the Underdark. Tall and bulky, they possess beast-like features and are covered in long, shaggy white hair that blankets their entire body. Some individuals paint their fur to better blend into their Underdark surroundings. Typically, they do not wear clothing, except for the leaders of their packs. They are known for their fearlessness. They are warlike and vicious, constantly roaming the Underdark in search of prey. They harbor a deep hatred for drow, as well as surface-dwelling elves and dwarves. They are organized into tribes, which claim specific territories within the Underdark, which they fiercely patrol in search of food. Any animals or creatures, including adventuring parties detected within their domain, are met with immediate aggression. They frequently lay ambushes when the opportunity arises. In combat, they rely on their claws or crude weapons, depending on the preference of their clan. They are known to enter a berserk rage, disregarding any weapons, in an attempt to tear their foes apart. While Quaggoths are formidable hunters, they also fall prey to other predators in the Underdark, particularly those like the drow or lithids who wield magic. Approximately half of all Quaggoths live in slavery. When captured at a young age, they can be trained as servants and guards. Drow often enslave them to serve as guards and handlers for spiders, while lithids use them as expendable soldiers. This experience of slavery often crushes a Quaggoth's will to live, leading them to exhibit a sort of death wish in combat. Free Quaggoths live as nomadic hunters, periodically changing territories. In each new territory, they establish a central cave as their lair, leaving behind a treasure guarded by a few members of the tribe. The rest of the tribe hunts, returning intermittently to rest and rotate the guard. Quaggoth leaders are known as Jalds, while Quaggoth shamans are referred to as Thonots and possess psionic abilities. Among the free Quaggoths, two main cultural traditions exist. Roughly 50% identify as beast followers, embracing their more animalistic traits. They reject civilization, refraining from cooking their meat or using weapons, relying instead on their natural rage and ferocity. The remaining tradition, known as magic followers, seek to enhance their natural abilities. They cook their food, employ basic combat tactics, and dye their fur for camouflage. They favor stone clubs or axes, though some Quaggoths who have previously been drow slaves wield superior weapons like steel battle axes or two-handed swords. About 1/5 of their clans embrace both traditions, while the rest adhere to only one. They craft few tools beyond rudimentary stone weapons, and implements show little inclination for art, except for the occasional bone and bead necklaces. Carnivores by nature, they consume humanoids like humans and dwarves, despite not particularly relishing their taste. They are known to scavenge all corpses after battles, including those of their fallen clan members for consumption. Following last rites, they ritually devour their deceased. Their language is a halting form of Undercommon, primarily conveying simple concepts. Communication often resembles barking and snarling more than coherent speech. More intelligent Quaggoths can grasp a few words of Dwergar, Drow, and Common. Their rituals and traditions are overseen by their psionic shamans, Thonots. Though some Quaggoths are rumored to venerate primal spirits and seek out places imbued with primal power, others are reported to worship aspects of Malar. Their exact origin remains a mystery. Some speculate that they are a surface-dwelling race that was driven underground, while others believe they were bred by drow magicians as a slave race, eventually escaping to establish their own existence in the Underdark. Certain scholars propose that they were once a semi-civilized people who held sway over much of the Underdark through conquest and ritual sacrifice, until their power was broken by the drow, Dwergar, and other races. They once had an underground kingdom, known as Ursa Dunthar, situated deep beneath the spine of the world, until it fell to Dwergar invaders from Glaxstug around -1350 during the Deep Bear battles. By the 14th century, a community of Quaggoths, orcs, and half-breeds, known as Boogans, had emerged in the Underdark beneath the Trollmoors. They identified themselves as the Spider Killers, an homage to their ongoing battle against drow invaders. Grimlocks are a race of monstrous humanoids residing in the Underdark, descended from humans who ventured into its depths centuries ago. They possess thick, slightly scaly gray skin, often scarred from navigating the narrow underground passages. Those with higher status in their society may bear decorative scar patterns on their skin. Grimlocks typically have sharp teeth and long, unkempt black hair, with some sporting long, claw-like nails. Some are reported to have entirely white eyes, while others are said to lack visible eyes altogether, with skin covering where their eye sockets should be. Their attire is minimal, usually limited to tan belts, harnesses, and decorative bracers. They are blunt and distrustful of other creatures. Those who stray from their communities often experience culture shock, but may also find some fascination in the strangeness of the world around them. These wanderers can overcome their xenophobic tendencies and view strangers as potential allies, a mindset reinforced through daily meditation. While they are prone to engaging in nefarious deeds, their actions are driven more by a deep-rooted instinct for self-preservation and the relentless struggle for survival rather than outright malice. Over centuries dwelling in the Underdark, they gradually lost their sight and became sensitive to light. In compensation, they developed keen senses of smell and echolocation. Despite their naturally robust physiques and heightened awareness of their environment, they are generally disorganized in combat. Their aversion to other races make them resistant to efforts to coerce them into organized fighting forces. They often launch attacks under cover of darkness, leveraging their blindness to disorient foes and gain the upper hand. Preferring close-quarters combat, they eschew ranged weapons in favor of crude stone battle axes or bone-made weapons, adopting a barbaric fighting style. Feeding on raw flesh, particularly that of humans, their populations are prone to decimation from consuming diseased meat. They typically go by two names, a pack name and a personal name, often derived from elements of their subterranean surroundings. Many wild Grimlocks are born in an extensive network of caves known as the Finger Home, which spans across the upper, middle, and lower regions of the Underdark. The central aspect of their society revolves around the Hunt Bond, a pact of mutual respect and protection formed between Grimlocks and one or more creatures, typically other Grimlocks. Those bound by the Hunt Bond are considered the Grimlocks' closest friends, and the Grimlocks will go to great lengths to safeguard them. In certain regions of the Underdark and Faerun, groups of Grimlocks worshipped individual Medusae, regarding them as minor deities. The formidable power of a Medusae gaze, beyond the understanding of the blind Grimlocks, appeared divine to them. However, the more enlightened Grimlocks tend to venerate Shar, the goddess of darkness. Additionally, some worship Illithids. Their language is a blend of common and undercommon. Some Grimlocks opted to learn Abyssal and other sinister tongues in pursuit of personal power through dark pacts. Due to their history of being frequent targets of raids by mind flayers and drow for enslavement, subjected by cruelty to aboleths, and suffering from the destruction of their mushroom fields and water sources by them, Grimlocks harbor a deep xenophobia. These adversities often left them starving and compelled to raid surface communities for survival. Some of their kind are employed by other races to carry out tasks such as ambushing Underdark caravans or plundering ancient ruins. According to certain accounts, they are believed to be descendants of humans from the Uthgard ancestry, specifically from the Golden Eagle and Red Pony tribes. Around 576, the year of the Sunless Passage, these barbarian tribes disappeared into the Underdark through a passage beneath one stone, an Uthgard ancestor mound located in the easternmost Moonwood. After years spent wandering in the lightless depths, these barbarians underwent evolutionary changes, eventually transforming into the Grimlocks. Despite their transformation, they retained distorted remnants of their ancient customs, including a twisted form of ancestor worship involving the consumption of the elderly and infirm while still alive. Another perspective suggests that Grimlocks originated from cannibal cults that emerged during the height of the Illithid Empire. Following the Empire's collapse, these cults sought refuge in the Underdark, where they eventually evolved into the Grimlock race. One specific tribe made their home in the Cavern of Cloven Heads, a small cave where 5,000 years ago, a battle occurred between a rear guard of dwarves from Clan Black Axe and a group of drow refugees, led by Menzoberra the Kinless, the Lolthite priestess who founded Menzoberranzan. This tribe abandoned their nomadic lifestyle and settled the surrounding caverns. Within the cavern lies a massive boulder inscribed with runes, surrounded by the shattered skulls of numerous drow. This discovery aligns with fragmentary legends concerning the Grimlock's lost ancestor mound, and led them to revere the site as such. However, the mound was actually an ancient dwarven cairn belonging to the Black Axe clan. The inscription on the boulder were Dethic runes, recounting the legend of the Bravebeards, with the rock itself marking the spot where the last defender of the dwarven rearguard, Dorn Blackaxe, vanished into the cavern floor. Additional communities of Grimlocks can be found beneath the Storm Horns and Thunder Peaks within Cormyr. as well as on the Sargath level of Undermountain. Fomorians are a race of giantkin grotesquely disfigured by an ancient curse, widely regarded as the most repulsive and malevolent among all giant races. In their original form, before their exile and transformation underground, Fomorians possess sharply defined and ageless features, bearing a resemblance to elves. The deformities present in their kind vary greatly among individuals. They include features such as randomly positioned facial elements, disproportionately sized or twisted limbs, hunchbacks, elongated, pointed heads, floppy ears, prominent noses, or mouths that range from gaping to minuscule. Some exhibited long, slender limbs endowed with formidable gripping strength, enabling them to traverse walls and ceilings with ease. Common characteristics shared by all Fomorians include a skin hue ranging from purple-gray to pale white, varying degrees of large warts scattered across their bodies, and a single eye that dwarfs the other. This dominant eye, referred to as their evil eye, features a feline-like iris and displays a range of colors. Hairlessness is a common trait among their kind of both genders, although some display scattered patches of hair that are tough as wire. As a result of their deformities, they are often clad in shreds of cloth, although some are known to don kilts and tabards of fine quality. They incorporate any bits of metal or armor they can find into their attire for added protection. They are inherently chaotic and evil beings, characterized by greed and disloyalty. Their enlarged ears and noses, as well as their distorted sensory organs, endow them with keen perception, making it difficult to sneak up on them. These deformities also grant them immunity to all forms of lycanthropy. Drawing from their lost spellcasting abilities, they have the ability to pass their curse onto other creatures. This is accomplished by locking eyes with creatures and using their evil eye. Affected individuals will experience temporary physical deformities and endure the suffering and malevolence characteristic of Fomorians, with some instances resulting in immobilization. Some of their kind aim to reclaim the arcane achievements of their ancestors. They attempt this by forming warlock pacts with members of the Gloaming Court or eldritch entities residing deep underground. These Fomorians acquire mastery over shadows. Others pursue this goal through an obsession with beauty, adopting the role of a witch. They learn to harness their evil eye as a source of magic and master the art of body alteration through alchemy. While their primary focus is on transforming their own bodies into more desirable forms, their inability to achieve perfection often drives them to exploit their powers to find or create flaws in others. Due to their deformities, they often lack the ability to hurl boulders like other giants. Instead, they rely on various blunt weapons in combat, such as great clubs, flails, maces, and giant bolas. The strongest among them typically wield crude shields and sport better armor. Their typical combat strategy involves sneaking up behind their adversaries and delivering powerful blows. Some myths attribute the origin of the Fomorians to one of the four sons born from the union of the giant goddess Othia and Elutiu, while others claim descent from Carantor, the son of Anam Allfather. They were once a remarkably beautiful race, considered the most attractive among all giants, and were renowned as scholars of magic. During this era, they resided in the Feywild and maintained alliances with the Plains Elves. Their society operated on a hierarchical structure, with prestige and status derived from achievements in the arcane. However, their hearts gradually succumbed to a craving for power and magic, coupled with a growing sense of entitlement. Eventually, driven by the investigation of Carantor, they attempted to conquer the Feywild, seeking to subjugate its inhabitants and seize their magic. In response, the Fey fought back and subjected the Fomorians to a curse, twisting their bodies to reflect the darkness within and stripping them of their spell-casting abilities. As a result, the Fomorians fled from the surface world into the depths of the Feydark and the Underdark. While some believe this transformation to be the result of the ambient magic of the Underdark rather than an actual curse, a few of the most ambitious and curious Fomorians departed for the outer planes before the conflict in the Feywild, preserving their untwisted forms. Around the year -2000, during the united efforts against the unleashed Khaz'goroth on the Moonshae Isles, Malar summoned Fomorians from the Feywild to aid him in battle. This conflict persisted for decades, until Khaz'goroth's minions were confined to isolated regions of the Moonshaes. Subsequently, the Fomorians conquered the Furbolgs in the region, enslaving them. Around -500, most of the Fey, including the Fomorians, abandoned their territories in the Moonshaes and retreated back into the Feywild. In 1369, Fomorians were part of a coalition of giantkin that attacked Wynn Castle to reclaim Queen Brianna and her newborn child. After the Spell Plague, a faction of Fomorians who were faithful to Queen Coname and their followers migrated from the Feywild to certain regions of the Moonshaes. They settled in Dernal Forest and seized control of Oman's Isle in 1479. Their society revolves around viciousness, with the cruelest and strongest typically assuming leadership roles. They are highly patriarchal, often treating their women and children no better than slaves. Acts of violence are commonplace among them. In the Feydark, Fomorian rulers typically enforce their authority through fear and oppression. They are also notorious for their extreme paranoia, fearing insurrection, and maintaining extensive spy networks to oversee their domains. This paranoia is not unfounded, as the Fomorians frequently plot against each other and scheme to usurp power from those who rule them. They can survive on little to no food for many weeks. Typical underground fare includes fungi, lichen, various plants, bats, fish, and mice. They especially enjoy the taste of large mammals. They primarily inhabit the Underdark and its counterpart in the Feywild, the Feydark. While they can be found throughout, they are most prevalent in the Middle Dark. Proper cities or holdings are rare in the eyes of most creatures in the Underdark, although settlements inhabited solely by Fomorians, even great cities, certainly exist. Their lairs in the Underdark are typically rich in fish, water, and mushroom forests. They mark their territories in various grim ways, such as painting their cavern walls with blood, assembling limbs and body parts into grotesque displays of the creatures they've slain, or using the corpses of their enemies. Outside of these subterranean realms, solitary Fomorians are occasionally encountered in mountain caves and abandoned mines. In northwest Faerun, a clan of Fomorians resides in the southern arm of the Spine of the World, near the Dungeon of the Ruins. In Anaruk, they can occasionally be found in the fertile areas of the Plain of Standing Stones, where they vie with local hill giants for resources and sometimes resort to cannibalizing other giants. In the Underdark, they are known to inhabit Teth Yamar and the kingdom of Zotharon, the latter of which is home to scattered tribes. In the Feydark, they dwell in immense caves adorned with glowing crystals and bioluminescent fungi. Those who reside in the Feydark can easily traverse into the prime material plane through portals, Fey crossroads, and their own ritual magic. Their largest domains on that plane include Harrowam, Mag-Turay, and Vorthalmel. These domains lack a central governing body overseeing them. Apart from the Feywild, Fomorians can also be encountered on the plane of Acheron, and reclusive groups of them inhabit concealed caverns in the elemental plane of Earth. They typically communicate in Giant and Undercommon. They primarily worship Karantor and consider him their patron deity. Many of their kind believe in the prophecy of a giant king being born among them, initially unaware of his destiny. Upon realization, he will transform into a giant larger than any Titan, subsequently transforming the entire Fomorian race back to their former beauty. Within the Ordning, Fomorians are considered Maug. Among giant kind, frost giants, hill giants, and ogres are the only known races to tolerate them. Many of their kind in the Ice Spires region perform manual labor for these races in exchange for poor quality food and lodging, often undertaking hazardous or unpleasant tasks. They are recognized for forming alliances with other beings when it serves their interests or when they are completely dominated. Such pacts typically endure only as long as the Fomorian fears its allies or until their goals diverge. However, Fomorians are also prone to betraying their companions on a whim due to their inherently disloyal nature. Among the inhabitants of the Feywild, Fomorians are rarely associated with the Seelie and Unseelie courts. Throughout history, Eladrin have been one of the races most despised by Fomorians due to their starkly contrasting worldviews. Alongside their Cyclops servants, they are considered the most significant organized threat to the Eladrin in the Feydark. They are known to frequently engage in the practice of slavery. Among the creatures they are known to enslave are Cyclopses, Gnomes, Svarts, Myconids, and Spriggans. They often keep various other creatures within their lairs or settlements, including Boggles, Derros, giant beetles, carrion crawlers, Organs, Ropers, and Trogdolites. Among all dragon types in the realms, they are most inclined to form alliances with deep dragons. Malabog reigned as king of the Fomorian giants in the Feywild during the late 15th century. He governed his own realm from a castle once inhabited by the plane's benevolent Fey creatures. During his conquests, Malabog acquired an Orb of Dragon Kind, a potent artifact granting him control over the blue dragon, Fulminorax. His arsenal included a formidable sword, shattered upon his defeat, with its remnants scattered within his castle. These shattered pieces are believed to retain pieces of Fomorian magic and can be fashioned into potent weapons. He led an army of Dark Fae fully devoted to his cause. His forces consisted of Redcaps, Quicklings, and formidable Cyclops warriors. Commanded by Fomorian generals and bolstered by dark magic from a coven of Fomorian witches, the army was led by Magra Kursai. His most prominent ally was his Black Knight and Chief General Celadine, a former honorable sentinel of the Gloaming Court whose mind had been corrupted by dark Fomorian magic. Malabog was a formidable Fomorian giant in the Feywild who rose to become king of his kind there. Supported by his loyal cadre of Fomorian warriors, he laid siege to the Fey castle and began expanding his influence. Seeking to enslave the elves of New Sharandar and seize control of the Fey crossing portal for an invasion of the prime material plane, he formed an alliance with the Lich Valindra Shadowmantle of Toril. Around the year of the Ageless One, 1479, the Ilion Bruin elves enlisted adventurers from Neverwinter to thwart the sinister plans of Malabog. The heroes of Sleeping Dragon Bridge defeated the Fomorian army and laid siege to his castle, ultimately putting an end to his campaign and slaying the Giant King. The Worm Things comprise a network of twisting tunnels situated north and west of Blending Stone in the Underdark. Most of these tunnels are tubes that intersect with each other with natural caverns. Initially believed to have been formed by a colony of purple worms, the tunnels later became home to various small tribes of kobolds who faced frequent attacks from larger predators. Prior to the Drow assault on Blending Stone, the Deep Gnomes tracked the remaining purple worms in the area, as their excretions often contained valuable metals and gemstones. The gnomes and kobolds, driven by racial animosity, frequently clashed with each other. Some speculated a connection between the worm writhings and the surface. They point to the Urlblook kobold tribe, located near the headwaters of the Goblintide River, which operates under the same matriarchal system as the various tribes within the worm writhings. Deep within the area lies a sizable cavern rich in gems, known locally as the Gargoyle Tube, due to the presence of gargoyle-like creatures in the surrounding tunnels. These creatures are in fact a group of Nabasu residing in the abandoned dwarfhold of Clan Deep Delve, also known as the Dungeon of Death. A significant portion of the region, known as the Vast Oblivium, is attributed to the beholder Karazikar, who utilized its disintegration ray to shape the terrain. The creature's lair comprises 10 vertical shafts surrounding a central chasm known as Karazikar's Maw, which plunges down the center of the cavern. Connecting the maw and the shafts are a series of horizontal tunnels and small caves intended for the beholder's slaves and followers. Rope bridges span the maw, linking many of the tunnels, while similar bridges inside the shafts are used by its inhabitants. Naturally, purple worms use the worm writhings as nesting grounds. Occasionally, other creatures establish symbiotic relationships with the worms, utilizing the area to hunt for prey attracted to the valuable eggs, and thereby protecting the eggs themselves. Giant spiders and other predators disinterested in the eggs often fulfill the role. Fomorian giants sometimes form alliances with the purple worms and oversee the clusters of eggs. The eggs are approximately the size of a halfling and possess silvery shells of exceptional hardness and are typically arranged in groups of 6, suspended from chamber walls by strands of adhesive saliva. They hold significant value for wizards seeking materials for arcane rituals. Hidden within the worm writhings lies a magical portal connecting to a smuggler's den beneath Waterdeep. Originally dubbed the Fireplace Level, this complex was established by House Ghost for illicit trade activities, but was abandoned and sealed in the year of the Catacombs 1308 after a purple worm inadvertently entered through the portal and became stuck. In the year of the Gate 1341, the company of crazed adventurers rediscovered the Fireplace Level, along with the immobilized purple worm and the portal. Helb and Aronson magically sealed the portal using a gate seal spell for the security of the city. Stronk was a Fomorian residing in the worm writhings during the late 15th century who developed a connection with the purple worms and assumed the role of caretaker for their eggs in the region. Around the year 1486, an expedition led by adventurers commissioned by Bruenor Battlehammer to address the threat posed by demon lords encountered Stronk. In their quest for a purple worm egg, required for a ritual to banish the demon lords, they clash with the Fomorian, resulting in his demise. Thalud, commonly referred to as tomb tappers or the faceless, are intelligent constructs engineered by the ancient Netherese Empire to safeguard against the incursions of the Faerun. Their origins date back to the inception of the Shadowed Age in Netherill's history, when a cadre of arcanists devised them to investigate the source of a burgeoning magical drain pervading Netheril. Standing at a height many times that of a normal humanoid, they are beings devoid of sex, hair, or facial features, with tough, smooth blue-gray skin. They possess claws capable of burrowing through solid rock, and gaping, toothed mouths located on their abdomens, earning them the moniker, the Faceless. A tomb tapper retains the collective memories of its predecessors, resulting in behavior that remains true to their original purpose across generations, collecting magical artifacts and eliminating non-human spellcasters. Additionally, they display a near-compulsive inclination to sculpt the rock formations around them into intricate, contorted shapes. They communicate through a humming sound generated by skin vibrations, a language partly comprehensible to mind flayers. They supplement this communication with telepathy. Additionally, they possess the ability to detect magic at will. Tappers perceive their surroundings through sonar, emitting inaudible sounds similar to those used by bats, with an accuracy extending a great distance. This sensory capability renders them vulnerable to silent spells. It allows them to detect invisible or displaced creatures and objects, while granting immunity to visual illusions and other spells related to vision. They exhibit immunity to spells affecting the mind or inducing charm effects, such as Hold Monster or Gias, and are also impervious to fire and cold-based attacks. Upon death, they permanently petrify into stone. They exhibit exceptional proficiency in traversing and manipulating solid rock, possessing the ability to animate rock once every 2 hours, summon spiked stones 3 times per day, and utilize stone shape up to 7 times per day. Additionally, they can dig through rock using their claws and employ hammers to split rock when a smooth surface is desired. In combat, a tapper employs iron-hard, long-fingered hands to inflict significant damage, often pouncing upon opponents to bite with its abdominal mouth, capable of crushing and tearing through armor, rock, and bone. Alternatively, if seeking to maintain distance from adversaries, it wields a formidable 10-foot-long hammer crafted from arenite, a magma alloy harder than most rock. Tappers can wield this weapon with one hand and throw it with remarkable accuracy. A favored tactic involves launching surprise attacks from concealed angles within solid rock. When confronted with multiple adversaries, tomb tappers utilize their magical capabilities to divide and conquer. They prioritize targeting spellcasters in their initial assault, occasionally utilizing their mouths to swiftly dispatch them. They earn their name due to their propensity for burrowing into tombs, temples, and caves in search of magical items, which they often carry away. They frequently attempt to acquire magic from living beings they encounter as well, showing little regard for whether the owner is alive or deceased. Magic holds a sacred significance for tomb tappers. They refrain from utilizing any magic they acquire, instead opting to safeguard and venerate such items. Throughout their lengthy lives, tappers dedicate themselves to the quest for the source of all magic, believed to be hidden deep within the earth. They hold earth elementals in reverence, viewing them as entities created by this enigmatic source, and hesitate to engage earth elementals in combat. Tomb tappers hoard all magical items they discover as a collective treasure for their clan, guarding them vigilantly. They also retain personal treasures in the form of decorative rocks stored within caverns illuminated by glow rock in the deepest recesses of the Underdark. Rumors abound of a grand central vault beneath the Honoric Desert known only as the Tomb, where countless magical items are rumored to be stashed by the tomb tappers. They utilize their stone-shaping abilities to fashion tools and fortifications. While many of these creations are rudimentary, some tomb tappers display exceptional craftsmanship. They are known to assist dwarves and deep gnomes, but harbor hostility toward drow, dwergar, mind flayers, Faerun, and Umber hulks. They are also known to keep Umber hulks as slaves. Their skin possesses the ability to adjust its porosity as needed, allowing them to absorb necessary water. Their stomach jaws are capable of crushing rock to extract mineral sustenance. While they can digest iron from blood and marrow if available, they don't hunt for sustenance. Although originally created as magical soldiers, tomb tappers have developed their own methods of reproduction. They were originally forged during the conflict between the Netherese and the Faerun, crafted through the fusion of magic, elemental earth, and the bodies of 9 volunteers from the impoverished districts of Netheril. The arch-wizards created the first Thalud, tomb tappers. These enigmatic warriors, devoid of facial features, were imbued with a hunger for magic, inherited memories, and a fervent belief in the sanctity of magic, as well as a fanatical hatred for non-human spellcasters. Their bond with elemental earth transformed the Thalud into subterranean creatures, leading them into conflict with the Faerun, though the Netherese were initially unaware of the source of the magic-draining spells when they created the tomb tappers. Nonetheless, their creation fulfilled this purpose. In the centuries following the collapse of Netheril, tomb tappers gained independence. Venturing into the depths, they clashed with the Mind Flayers, Umber Hulks, Drow, and Dwergar. The tomb tappers' remarkable recollection ensured that the actions of these races were neither forgotten nor forgiven. However, their primary adversaries remain the Faerun, who they target above all others. With the resurgence of Thultan Thar in the Year of Wild Magic in 1372, and the subsequent revival of the Netherese Empire in the 15th century, many tomb tappers returned to serve their ancient masters. The re-established Netherese also reintroduced the ancient methods for creating more Thalud, resulting in a significant influx of new tomb tappers tasked with guarding, constructing, and siege warfare duties. Cloakers are intelligent beings that inhabit subterranean environments and bear a striking resemblance to large flying manta rays when active. However, when at rest, they assume the appearance of a black cloak, hence their name. In their dormant state, cloakers are nearly identical to oversized cloaks, often appearing to possess clasps and buttons. When in motion, they resemble large, leathery stingrays, equipped with wings spanning the length of an average humanoid that unfurl as they navigate through underground caverns. Their tails are long and whip-like, while their heads are nestled within the cowl of their cloak-like bodies, featuring red eyes and a toothy mouth. Adjacent to their heads, bony claws resemble clasps for the cloak. Their backs and wings are black to aid in camouflage, contrasting with their pale bellies. Some cloakers exhibit a series of spots arranged in 2 parallel lines along their backs, resembling buttons. Composed predominantly of muscle and cartilage, their bodies possess a sturdy and flexible structure. Their minds and thought processes are so alien that certain scholars once posited that communication with them was impossible. While this assertion ultimately proved false, it remains true that cloakers possess exceptionally high intelligence and exhibit chaotic tendencies, making their motives and actions exceedingly difficult to predict. They are fiercely territorial creatures, typically resorting to lethal force against any intruders who enter their domain. The only exception to this rule occurs when they devise more entertaining fates for the trespassers. Communication for cloakers occurs through a subsonic moan, inaudible to most creatures. They possess the ability to amplify the intensity of these moans as a defense mechanism, rendering them audible and inducing a sense of fear and nausea in their adversaries. At its highest intensity, the subsonic moan can immobilize an individual, although it cannot penetrate dense materials like stone. Some cloakers exhibit the ability to manipulate shadows around them, although exposure to a light spell renders them blind and nullifies the capability. Others can create up to 3 illusory duplicates of themselves, mirroring their movements, but only within areas of darkness. They typically employ one of 2 strategies when hunting for prey. They either lie in wait, ready to ambush unsuspecting victims, or they stalk their targets from a safe distance. When the moment is right, they will strike with remarkable swiftness, unfurling their fins to engulf their prey. Once ensnared, they use their long, whip-like tails to fend off any intervening creatures. Preferring not to venture far from their lairs, cloakers are generally reclusive beings. However, older individuals may exert influence over small groups of humans, goblins, and drow, often employing Derro and Quaggoths as their most common servants. In some cases, cloakers are even worshipped as deities by tribes. Despite this, cloakers themselves do not venerate any deity. The solitary and chaotic nature of cloakers largely explains why they rarely pose an organized threat to surface dwellers. However, on occasion, one or more cloaker lords may gather a population of cloakers to establish a city. Despite a preference for solitude, Cloaker communities exhibit surprising social tendencies, with creatures forming peculiar social cliques, castes, and roles. Popular Cloakers are often distinguished by their larger size, darker coloration, and the number of pets they keep, which may include enslaved Darkmantles, Lurkers, or humanoids. Cloakers possess a voracious appetite and are capable of consuming nearly anything, although they are known to endure inexplicably long periods between meals. While they do hunt for sustenance and often prioritize feeding over inaction with intelligent beings, scholars debate whether Cloakers truly require food for survival. Some speculate that they may not hunt or eat for pleasure, but rather for some other purpose. Believed to originate from the plane of shadow, Cloakers are prevalent inhabitants of the Underdark of Faerun. They dwell either alone or in settlements such as Cloakhaven or Ringlor Naroth. Scholars also suggest that Cloakers may have once inhabited the ruined Underdark city of Ikemu. Additionally, populations of Cloakers are found in and below the Storm Horns and the Thunder Peaks, with a secret, direct means of traversing between the two mountain ranges. In other regions, Cloakers reign as warlords over lesser creatures in locales like the Shadow Swamp, which lies within the plane of shadow, hosting beings like the Girash and the Humat. Beyond this plane, Cloakers can also be encountered in the domains of dread. They possess their own intricate language, which, although comprehensible to non-Cloakers, is exceedingly complex and requires a high degree of cognitive organization to understand and speak. Consequently, only skilled mages have been known to master the language, often after extensive study. Scholars speculate that Cloakers may potentially be an asexual species, although conclusive evidence to support this hypothesis has remained elusive. Observations of their behavior within settlements suggest instances of courtship among their kind. However, it is known that a Cloaker Lord possesses the ability to generate new Cloakers through a form of asexual reproduction. Snow Cloakers are a distinct variation of Cloaker adapted to thrive in cold and snowy environments, particularly the high ice. In appearance and behavior, they closely resemble ordinary Cloakers, except for their striking, snowy white coloration, which facilitates blending into their wintry surroundings. Their sinewy bodies, resembling cloaks, are remarkably resilient to the cold temperatures, enabling them to navigate through icy conditions with silent flight. In the high ice, they are known for their alien intelligence, their fiendish nature, and territorial behavior. Similar to their underground counterparts, they are solitary carnivores, but they prefer to dwell near the surface or establish their lairs in icy rifts and crevices. They employ patience and stealth and are adept hunters, relying on camouflage to approach their prey unnoticed, then swooping down from above to feed. They are exceptionally rare creatures, reportedly found exclusively in and around Lochloch, the lake of ice, situated within a rift on the high ice. This unique lake, which remains partially unfrozen, provides a habitat for aquatic creatures, attracting both travelers and predators, who become the primary targets of the Snow Cloakers. By the 14th century, their population around Lochloch had dwindled to a small number, leaving some like Elminster to speculate that the species may be on the brink of extinction. Cloaker Lords are a formidable subrace of Cloakers and are larger and more powerful beings, often assuming leadership roles among their lesser kin. In appearance, a Lord resembles a regular Cloaker, but on a much grander scale. They possess a bat-like physique, resembling massive black cloaks akin to those worn by giants. When unfurled, their bodies reveal a white underside, adorned with red eyes, and a mouth filled with sharp fangs. Each wing terminates in sharp claws, while their muscular tails feature a sharp, bony barb at the tip. Although Cloaker Lords can age and can grow larger over time, some Dwarven scholars speculate that they may exist beyond the constraints of time itself. A notable ability of the Cloaker Lord is its capability to emit an eerie subsonic moan at will. This sound induces various negative effects on creatures within its vicinity, ranging from nausea and fear to outright paralysis. The Cloaker Lord can manipulate the intensity and pitch of this moan to produce different effects. They possess an inherent talent for casting a diverse array of spells, relying solely on verbal components. Their magical abilities expand with their size, specializing mainly in illusion and shadow magic, broadening their options for debilitating foes or enhancing their mobility. Additionally, they maintain a strong affinity with the Shadowfell, granting them the power to manipulate the shadows and breach the barrier between the prime material plane and that realm. This enables them to summon lesser shadow creatures and shift between the two planes once per day. Cloaker Lords also possess the ability to dominate lesser Cloakers, exerting a form of control over them. They display a heightened aggressiveness compared to their counterparts, yet they are not reckless. Their minds are so alien that communication with them is nearly impossible for most beings. They employ their abnormal moans to intimidate prey into submission and enslave creatures they wish to use to lure for more desirable victims or distracting more formidable adversaries. Some lords amass groups of thralls, compelling them into submission with the constant drone of their moans. Deepspawn and floaters are particularly favored as minions. In battle, a cloaker lord initiates with its eerie moan to disorient or scatter its adversaries. It utilizes its shadow manipulation capabilities to obscure enemies' vision, create distracting illusions, and generate mirror images of itself. Subsequently, it ensnares individual foes by wrapping its body around them, restricting their movements before attacking with its fangs. While in position, it can also extract blood from the victim through its skin, ultimately consuming the creature except for its bones. As it feeds, the Cloaker Lord defends itself from other threats, using its barbed tail. When confronted by multiple enemies, it prioritizes targeting the wizards. Their enigmatic minds provide them with significant resistance against most mind-affecting magic and psionics, particularly when wielded by individuals unfamiliar with Cloaker Lord's cognition and behavior. They inhabit underground environments, notably the Underdark or the Shadowfell, although sightings in Hal Rua are not unheard of. As a Cloaker Lord ages or nears the end of its life, it consumes a lesser Cloaker, initiating a reproduction cycle lasting 2 to 8 days. At the conclusion of this period, the Cloaker Lord divides, giving rise to a new Cloaker Lord and up to 6 new Cloakers. These offspring then disperse to seek sustenance and dominance independently. Occasionally, one or more Cloaker Lords gather their weaker kin, sometimes forming small raiding parties or even entire settlements, such as the city of Ringlor Narath beneath Kalim Shan, or Cloaker Haven in the Darklands. In settlements governed by multiple Cloaker Lords, these leaders periodically merge their forms to create a massive living ring or sphere composed of shadow stuff, known as a conclave of shadows. During this amalgamation, not only do their physical bodies combine, but their minds meld as well, enabling them to share thoughts and swiftly reach a unanimous decision. Upon concluding a conclave, when the Cloaker Lords revert to their individual forms, they do so with a unified understanding of the necessary actions, proceeding to implement the conclave's resolutions. The Conclave of Shadows typically convenes sporadically or when an urgent decision is needed. Similar to standard Cloakers, they are believed to originate from the plane of Shadow. Although they have long existed in Faerun, Cloaker Lords and the organized Cloaker communities surrounding them were first encountered just a few centuries before the mid to late 14th century, with the remarkable exception of the ancient Ringlor Narath, which purportedly remained untouched for 10,000 years. Scholars remain uncertain whether Cloaker Lords are newcomers to the realms, or if they simply concealed their presence prior to that era. Before the mid-14th century, they were not recognized for their spellcasting powers, but they had begun to display increasingly potent abilities, seemingly due to a deepening connection with the plane of shadow. During the late 15th century, a Cloaker Lord named Erith established dominance among Cloakers and cultivated various monsters within the Lost Ways beneath the West Galena Mountains. Certain scholars theorized that Cloaker Lords were simply ancient Cloakers. In the same era, the mage and scholar Silan Marillus emerged as a leading authority on Cloaker ecology, having even engaged in communication with them. Some speculate about a potential connection between Cloakers and creatures referred to as Trappers. Trappers are uncommon creatures related to Lurkers and typically inhabit underground environments. Their basic form is highly flattened, resembling a large manta ray with a rugged exterior, akin to stone in density and texture. They can grow to cover a large area, the size of almost an entire cavern. Trappers possess adept climbing abilities, effortlessly adhering to walls and ceilings. Hatchlings resemble small flat rocks. During digestion, they consume only the flesh of their prey, leaving behind bones, metal, and other indigestible materials. In periods of prey scarcity, they enter a hibernation-like state, remaining aware of their surroundings despite the dormancy, which can persist for several months. They have the ability to shapeshift their bodies, altering the texture and colors of their exterior to blend seamlessly with the surfaces composed of earth, stone, or wood. However, they cannot mimic the texture of grassy or snow-covered terrain. They commonly mimic nearby floors, creating a raised area in the center resembling a box or treasure chest to attract prey. They also have the ability to adhere to and blend with walls or ceilings. When remnants of past victims are present, trappers conceal them with their bodies, enhancing their camouflage and making them exceptionally challenging to detect. Trappers are immune to damage from extreme heat or cold, as well as spells employing these elements. Upon a prey's approach into the center of their body, they alter their form to ensnare them, encasing them within a spherical shape, crushing and suffocating them. They maintain this ball-like form while digesting their prey. Alternatively, they may affix themselves to nearby walls or ceilings close to a previous victim's remains, utilizing them as bait. As of the 14th century, trappers inhabit the depths of Undermountain. Amidst the chaos of Hallister's Harvesttide in the year of the Gauntlet, 1369, 2 trappers emerged from Undermountain through the Sojourner's Portal into the crypts beneath the Temple of Old Night. These creatures live solitary lives. Unlike lurkers, who deposit their eggs on ceilings, trappers lay their eggs in clustered, pebble-like masses. They are carnivorous beings. To sustain themselves, they require a meal equal to or larger than a halfling at least once a week. Primarily, they are found in caves, caverns, and exceptionally dark locales, although they show a preference for subterranean environments above all others. Many are encountered in dungeons or along heavily traversed roads, as they will linger in an area for extended periods if food is plentiful. Some are also known to be found within the mid-level caverns of deep earth. Lurkers, also known as the Lurkers above, are a type of aberration encountered in the Underdark. Physically, they resemble manta rays, but are significantly larger in size and possess a gray underside with a texture reminiscent of stone. They tend to engage in combat with others tenaciously, often persisting until the point of death. Their ability to fly stems from a gas they naturally produce within internal sacs, granting them buoyancy that they utilize by flapping their wing-like appendages. Thanks to their exceptional camouflage, they are exceedingly difficult to detect in their natural environment. Their hunting method involves lurking along the ceilings of caverns and tunnels, blending in with their surroundings. When prey passes beneath them, they drop from above, striking and enveloping their target. They dispatch their prey through constriction. As of the year 1357, they could occasionally be encountered in the sewers beneath Waterdeep. Female lurkers deposit a cluster of eggs in a viscous substance on the ceiling of a cave or tunnel. Upon hatching, the fledgling lurkers plummet to the ground, where they sustain themselves by preying on small creatures until they attain the ability to fly independently. Being solitary beings, the young must fend for themselves. They have an omnivorous diet and consume whatever sustenance they can procure. They are sought after for training and employment as defensive assets. Lurker eggs are known to fetch a price as high as 1,000 gold. Additionally, the gas produced by lurkers serves as a valuable material component in the crafting of potions of levitation. Derro are a humanoid species that inhabit the Underdark. Physically, they bear a resemblance to diminutive dwarves, sporting blue-gray skin and often having white, yellow, or pale tan hair. Their eyes lack irises and pupils, presenting uniformly pale orbs. Many Derro appear unkempt, clad in worn attire, evoking pity from unsuspecting observers. They possess eyes capable of perceiving total darkness and the ultraviolet spectrum. They often experience discomfort or nausea when exposed to sunlight. They typically boast agile bodies, adept and dexterous. In combat, they are commonly seen wielding light-repeating crossbows loaded with poison-laced arrows, hooked fauchards, daggers, spears, and aklis. According to legend, Derro originally inhabited the surface of Faerun. However, they allegedly opened portals to the Far Realm, angering the World Serpent, who subsequently banished them to the Underdark. According to the Duergar, the Derro were once a dwarf clan held captive by mind flayers, leading to their subsequent descent into madness. The Derro themselves tell constantly changing versions of their mythic god's tale, all of which revolve around his theft of magic from a great evil to aid the Derro in surviving through a period of deceit and cruelty. Derro are described as a peculiar and sadistic race. Despite their cunning and stealth, they are also prone to murderous insanity. It is common for Derro to obsess over peculiar quests, such as collecting specific gemstones or exterminating members of a particular race. Some Derro receive specific assignments from powerful Derro savants, and they may even form alliances to achieve irrational goals. Surviving the perils of the Underdark, Derro bands rely on intense paranoia and the mystical abilities of their leaders. They can be encountered across the entire expanse of the Underdark. There are established colonies beneath the savage north, while others inhabit warrens within Duergar cities like Gracklstugh, albeit they are treated as the scorned underclass. While many Derro hold reverence for the deity Darinka, only a small number actually become clerics. Instead, they believe Darinka's favor manifests through the sorceress abilities of their numerous savants. Darinka, who is regarded as the patron god of the Derro, particularly the savants, is depicted as the twin brother of the forgotten demigod Dinkarazan. Known as the Betrayer, Darinka is a deity associated with magic, knowledge, and cruelty. Legend holds that he created the Derro by stealing magic and cunningly leaving his sibling to bear the consequences, imparting upon the degenerate dwarves the values of deceit and cruelty. Darinka typically assumes the guise of a diminutive, stunted creature resembling a hybrid of a Derro and a lich. Darinka is depicted as a malevolent, spiteful, and detestable deity, characterized by chaos and deceit with a preference for betrayal to achieve his ends. He demonstrates little regard for anything or anyone, including himself, perhaps due to the lingering remorse from the ancient betrayal he inflicted upon his brother. A proficient wizard and capable priest, he possesses the ability to wield spells from any school of magic or sphere of divine influence at will. Much of his magical ability, however, stems from stolen power derived from Ilsensign. His avatar is imbued with the protective properties typically associated with a lich. He is adorned in a magical robe in a perpetual state of flux, shifting between shades of gray, white, and black. Darinka can draw up to 5 magical strands from it daily. Holding these strands, he can unleash potent versions of slay living, disintegrate, and destruction spells through white, gray, and black threads. Additionally, he carries a dagger of venom, a wand of cold, and wears a ring of telekinesis and a brooch of shielding. His domain, aptly named the Hidden Betrayal, remains concealed within the 3rd layer of Pandemonium, Phlegethon. None who have glimpsed it have returned to recount its details, though it is rumored to be shrouded in a chilling darkness and perpetually drips with foul water. Darinka typically dispatches avatars for his own gain, often to acquire magical artifacts or to indulge in acts of cruelty for his own amusement. If he opts to punish his servants, it is usually driven by whim or temper, and he refrains from sending omens directly, although he may indirectly guide them toward magical items or locations, albeit via perilous routes. Despite their divine status, Darinka and his twin brother are among the least respected of the dwarven gods. Even Abathor, though distrusted and disliked by other members of the Morden Saman, is still considered part of the pantheon. The Duergar deities Laodegar and Deep Dwera are at least acknowledged as members in exile, still recognized by the dwarves, with Laodegar's status being debatably mutual. In contrast, Darinka and Dinkarazan have not only been banished, but completely disowned. The primary reason cited for Mordane's banishment of the twins was their irredeemably evil nature. However, it is also speculated that fear and jealousy of their formidable magical abilities may have influenced the consensus. Darinka, in particular, stood out as the most magically gifted among the dwarven deities, a rarity within a pantheon that predominantly consists of deities with martial or craftsmanship-focused domains. Considered among the younger members of the Elder Pantheon, Darinka and Dinkarazan were believed to be offspring of Moradin himself, although their lineage remains ambiguous. Except among the Derro, Darinka is universally reviled. His sole-known ally is Kiaran Sali, an ascended necromancer and goddess of the undead. Conversely, numerous members of the pantheon, such as Lolth, Faerun, Alistri, Sevatarm, and Gaunador, view him as an adversary. Additionally, the Duergar gods count among his foes. According to the Duergar beliefs, Darinka may have cursed part of Hammergrim, causing haunting spirits to gradually drain the ruling chieftain's strength. Although it's possible they confused him with Dinkarazan. Other adversaries of the Deep Lich include Caladuran Smoothhands, the patron deity of the Deep Gnomes, and Shevarash, the elven god of vengeance. Before his expulsion from the Morden Saman, Darinka held the position of the dwarven deity of magic and knowledge. His iconic swirling spiral symbol, which had been utilized since the era of Deep Shanatar, adorned many magical artifacts originating from Torglor. However, following Shanatar's downfall, reverence for Darinka dwindled as newer gods like Dugmar and Brightmantle gained prominence. While the majority of Derro worship Darinka, few among their ranks serve as actual clerics. Instead of conventional priests, the clergy of Darinka consisted of savants who received power from him in a unique manner. Rather than bestowing spells, Darinka imbued the Derro with sorcery derived from an unusual source for a god, his own magical essence. This resulted in a heightened propensity for sorcerous abilities among the race, with those possessing such powers considered especially favored by the great savant. The magical abilities of Derros savants is considerable, although not all sorcerers within their ranks automatically attain this status. To become savants, individuals have to achieve a certain level of power, often mentoring 2 less experienced students. As undisputed leaders of the Derro, savants wield authority over their kin, who fervently follow them. The noticeable madness prevalent among all Derro, typically characterized by paranoia and mania, is attributed by the Derro to the savants, who they believe carry messages from their god, the Deep Lich. In reality, Derro displays a considerable indifference toward the actions and teachings of his savants, providing them with no guidance or signs. His primary concern lies in their reverence for him and their assistance in strengthening the Derro. Savants take it upon themselves to lead their people and interpret Derro's teachings. They maintain order within their communities, enforce discipline among their forces, and instruct on the proper treatment of slaves, often employing spells to subdue and control rather than lethally engage in order to enslave their adversaries. Driven by a pursuit of magic and power, savants focus on adventuring and crafting to acquire magical items. While some local Derro pantheons may feature a warrior demigod with a secondary emphasis on weaponsmithing, the domain of magical weapon manufacturing is unequivocally attributed to Derro. Historically, Derro served as the patron deity of the Shanatar fiefdom of Torglor, known as the Silver Kingdom, situated beneath the Snowflake Mountains. Torglor boasted extensive connections between the upper and middle Underdark, but maintained minimal ties to the surface world. The dwarves of Torglor were celebrated for their ingenuity and mastery of rune magic. Like Coralnor, the city dedicated to Dinkarzan's faith, Torglor's forces engaged in skirmishes with the thrall armies of the Illithids and Orendal long after the formal cessation of the Mindstalker Wars. Torglor's artisans developed numerous unconventional weapons and tactics for combating the Mind Flayers, many of which have endured into the present day. At a certain juncture, Derro and Dinkarzan, both fledgling deities, aspired to expand their influence by creating a new dwarven subrace distinguished by traits such as speed, agility, and proficiency in magic, qualities that would set them apart from other dwarves. Drawn to deeper realms in their kin, they ventured into the Underdark, where they stumbled upon a vast cavern shimmering with raw, primal magic. Intrigued, they began collecting the peculiar, otherworldly artifacts scattered across the cavern, particularly focusing on a verdant central crystal sphere hovering just above the ground. However, as they gathered these artifacts, a colossal spectral brain emerged from the sphere, regarding them with a cold detachment. Unbeknownst to them, they had trespassed into the domain of Ilsensign, who viewed their intrusion with disdain. Before the wrath of the Illithid deity could be unleashed upon the diminutive dwarves pilfering its secrets, Derro betrayed his brother, leaving him to face Ilsensign's retribution alone. Dinkarzan was subsequently condemned to suffer in the abyss, his existence largely forgotten by all save the Illithids. Within Derro lore, perpetuated by the shamans, he was ostracized, with few Derro aware of his identity. When mentioned, it is typically in the context of betrayal, further cementing Derro's status as the figure to emulate among the Derro. Dinkarzan manifests as a tall, gaunt Derro, at least considerably tall by Derro standards. His visage is marked by a crazed stare, with the most striking feature being his eyes, which gleam with a menacing red hue against black pupils. An ever-present whirlwind envelops him, and his hair constantly streams behind him, shifting in color, texture, and straightness unpredictably. The vast majority of Dinkarzan's existence is consumed by a tormented state of perpetual insanity. On the rare occasions when he is granted respite from this madness, a sane Dinkarzan remains a fervent, homicidal maniac, with his lucidity failing to temper his murderous impulses. Abandoned by his own kin and feeling betrayed by his people, he harbors a deep-seated desire for the destruction of the Derro. Despite his insanity, Dinkarzan is not immune to experiencing terror. Drowning, whether in water or lava, as well as encountering certain horrific monsters from the Illithid deity Ilsensign, rank among his greatest fears. Physically, his avatar lacks notable strength. While proficient as a rogue, it eschews weapons, relying on hand-to-hand combat and melee encounters. What truly renders Dinkarzan formidable is his wild magic ability, although he has no control over it. Despite possessing knowledge of high-level evocation and abjuration spells, his magical capabilities fluctuate dramatically, oscillating unpredictably between the potent sorcery of a seasoned spellcaster and the feeble enchantments of a novice from moment to moment. Similarly, his other abilities are more triggered than actively engaged. Attempts to probe the thoughts of the mad god invariably result in madness, and there is a 1 in 4 chance that any spell cast upon him, which he cannot resist, will rebound upon the caster, regardless of his intentions. By harnessing the surrounding winds, he can manifest a range of spell-like effects, including Whispering Wind, Featherfall, Gust of Wind, Wind Wall, Wind Blast, or Stinking Cloud. However, he has no control over which ability manifests, and each is equally likely to occur. Despite his status as an Abyssal Lord, Dinkarzon's realm in the Abyss, situated in the 586th layer, is less a dominion than a prison, hence its moniker. The intricate curse binding him there can only be lifted by a greater deity or by destroying an artifact known as Ilsensign's Ring, which incidentally carries a small chance of inadvertently summoning a deranged avatar of Dinkarzon intent on seizing and destroying it. Approximately once every 50 years, with some variation, he briefly regains sanity for 1 day. The prison of the Mad God is characterized by a perpetual whirlwind of air, gas, and floating rocks, encircling a central stone throne adorned with various gems and stones, serving as the locus of his torment, where he is subjected to visions of his deepest fears. The distances between locations within the realm fluctuate erratically on a minute-by-minute basis, while the entire layer is dimensionally unstable. The conflicting forces of Carcerai and Pandemonium tug at the realm due to its imprisoning and maddening qualities, maintaining a delicate balance that prevents it from slipping into either plane and thus keeping it within the abyss. Despite being confined to this plane, Dinkarzon retains the ability to slay visitors, an act he is equally likely to commit, whether in a state of madness or sanity. Whenever the Mad God is able, he dispatches an avatar to the prime material plane to hunt and annihilate entire Derro communities. His unrelenting pursuit of vengeance often leads to the destruction of his avatar, as its initially calculated genocidal actions devolve into indiscriminate slaughter until its eventual demise. Initially revered as the patron deity of one of the 8 sub-kingdoms of Deep Shanatar, the Jewel Kingdom of Coral Nor, Dinkarzon's symbol, a ring of 7 gems, was later associated with confusion by scholars, as it bears similarity to a symbol commonly attributed to Mistra. However, his reign as a supreme deity came to an end following the Spawn Wars, during which the dwarves of Shanatar collectively abandoned the worship of Dinkarzon in favor of the Morden Saman pantheon. Following his banishment into the Abyss, the veneration of Dinkarzon experienced a sharp decline. His symbol faded into obscurity, and he found himself devoid of worshippers or intermediaries. Derro shamans invoke his name solely in the context of praising Darinka for his cunning escape achieved through the treacherous act of betraying his brother. Dinkarzon managed to sustain a modest base of worshippers through deception and deceit. One such group is a cult of dwarven axe worshippers who revere the living axe, a malevolent battle axe rumored to have been ensnared by Dinkarzon's twisted dreams. This cult believed that Dinkarzon's influence was responsible for the axe's corrupted intelligence, leading to their depraved practices. However, since the time of Troubles, Dinkarzon's influence has been on the ascent. The last vestige of his power in the Underdark resides in the throne of the Mad God, formerly a seat of authority in troll-infested Coralnor. Through an enigmatic process, he channels a manifestation of his ancient power through this throne. Leveraging Derro renegades drawn to his madness, he employs the throne to manipulate trolls into waging battles for territory both on the surface and in the Underdark, particularly against the Illithids of Orendal. Following the betrayal of his brother, Darinka retreated to his own domain, harboring the secrets he had managed to pilfer from Ilsensign. Concealing himself from the scrutiny of the other dwarven deities, he devoted centuries to manipulating the stolen magic. Through gruesome experiments conducted on dwarves, he unleashed a horde of mindless, malformed abominations resembling dwarves, lurking in remote cave complexes where he discarded them. He subjected his former dwarf followers to twisted transformations until he perfected the Derro, molding them into the hate-fueled race they would become for generations to come, with his experiments culminating in the creation of the Savants. Given the Derro's preference for madness and fanaticism, their origin narratives vary in accuracy, although kernels of truth remain embedded within them. In conventional Derro mythology, Darinka is portrayed as their sole creator, a notion that is clearly inaccurate, as the cruel machinations of the Illithids undeniably played a role in shaping the Derro's abilities. Depending on the agenda of Darinka's savants, the narrative shifts, sometimes vilifying Ilsen-Sign or the Mind Flayers in general. However, the consistent thread in these tales is Darinka's betrayal of his brother to seize magical power stolen from a malevolent entity. The subsequent events diverge significantly in Derro lore. In certain myths, the Derro were driven into the depths of the Underdark by jealous dwarf gods who resented Darinka's creations and power. Conversely, other accounts depict Darinka preemptively hiding the Derro in the Underdark to forestall a potential uprising born of envy. In reality, it was the benevolent dwarves who expelled the Derro to the depths of the Underdark, while the dwarf gods banished Darinka. The ruins of Torglor have remained deserted for many years, although occasional adventurers who engage in combat with the inhabitants of Orendal still venture there, seeking innovative strategies to overcome the Illithids. The Torglor scepter, bearing the distinctive spiral symbol, has remained under the ownership of the Reisalar noble family of Halrua for centuries, never straying from scholarly circles. Bupido is a shrewd Derro assassin who resides in the Underdark as of the late 1480s. Deeply unhinged, he fancies himself as the earthly embodiment of the Derro deity Dinkarzan. Believing himself to be the divine agent of murder, he deemed it necessary to offer gruesome sacrifices to pave a path of chaos through the Underdark, leading his people to glory. In his delusional perspective, any setbacks he encountered are merely components of his divine plan. Convinced of his own godhood, he holds an unwavering belief in his invincibility, regarding his mortal demise as inconsequential. Hence, he exhibits complete fearlessness. Originally hailing from the Dwergar city of Gracklstugh, he roamed the Underdark, executing his meticulously planned killings while concealing his true identity behind a friendly facade. However, during the late 1480s, he fell into the clutches of drow slavers from Velkenvelf. Droki operates as a Derro outlaw within Gracklstugh as of the early 1490s. He harbors a deep-seated animosity towards everyone in general, with a particular disdain for surfacers. When encountering individuals from the surface, he dedicates time to insulting and deceiving them. Should anyone dare to pilfer his satchel, Droki would erupt into a spectacular tantrum. He holds an intense fixation on adhering to precise locations and timings for his actions, convinced that deviating from these arrangements will alter his destiny. Droki gained notoriety as a criminal courier, facilitating the transportation of goods for numerous gangs and secret societies operating within Gracklstugh. Amidst the demonic upheaval that beset the Underdark in the late 1480s, he undertook commissions for the Grey Ghost Thieves Guild and a clandestine cult of demon-worshipping Derro. Consequently, he found himself on the wanted lists of the authorities. The Dao are a type of genie originating from the elemental plane of Earth. Typically, they tend towards evil inclinations, finding no qualms in enslaving others, though they greatly fear losing their own freedom and hold disdain for those who would imprison them. Nonetheless, they often reciprocate acts of fairness and kindness. They take immense pride in well-crafted items and intricately devised schemes. They possess immunity to harm from earth-based spells or abilities and can effortlessly tunnel through non-magical layers of earth and stone without causing disturbance. Additionally, they can transport inanimate objects while burrowing. Once daily, a Dao can grant a limited wish, restricted to beings native to the prime material plane. However, they cannot grant wishes to other genies, and any wish fulfilled is twisted or malign in its outcome. For instance, someone might wish for shelter only to find a palace inhabited by a monstrous entity. Similar to other genies, the Dao possess the ability to traverse freely between all elemental planes, as well as the prime material, astral, and ethereal planes. However, they seldom exercise this capability due to their inclination to remain close to home. Upon a Dao's demise, their body dissolves into a fine crystalline dust, leaving behind any possessions they carried. They inherently possess magical ability. They can cast spells such as Detect Evil and Good, Detect Magic, and Stone Shape at will. Additionally, they can cast Move Earth, Pass Wall, and Tongues 3 times daily. They can cast Conjure Elemental Earth, Gaseous Form, Invisibility, Phantasmal Killer, Plane Shift, Wall of Stone, Misdirection, and Spectral Force once per day. In combat, they are known to engage in close quarters fighting, utilizing their fists and mauls. Among all genie races, they are renowned for their industrious nature. They dedicate much of their time to activities like mining, shaping, and excavation, which contributes to the presence of slavery within their society. Genies established an empire within the elemental plane of Earth, known as the Great Dismal Delve, heavily reliant on slave labor. The governance centers on the capital city of the sevenfold maze work, under the leadership of the great Khan, Gabriel al-Sarah al-Zalil. Outside the elemental plane of earth, Dao can be found in significant numbers, inhabiting the quasi-elemental plane of dust, the quasi-elemental plane of minerals, the para-elemental plane of magma, and the para-elemental plane of ooze. Extending beyond these realms, they roam with magical defenses throughout the inner planes, as well as the astral and ethereal planes, seeking beings to enslave. Occasionally, Dao can be encountered on the prime material plane, seeking to establish new markets and supply routes for their empires. They favor mountainous terrain, reminiscent of their native realm, while mortal cities unsettle them. Similar to their home environment, some operate gem mining ventures on the prime material, with a notable presence in untamed expanses in Sahara. There are also cities of Dao in the Underdark. They typically engage in both diplomatic discourse and trade with Efreet, exchanging goods such as refined metals for minerals. Conversely, they harbor a disdain and animosity towards Jinn, Marids, and Jan. In certain instances, Dao residing in the para-elemental plane of magma may even enter into conflicts with Efreet inhabiting the same realm. Other denizens native to the elemental plane of earth tend to steer clear of Dao out of fear of enslavement. Creatures capable of traversing through stone, such as Zorn, are utilized by Dao as scouts to identify potential excavation sites. Resourceful wizards on the prime material are known to entice Dao to this realm and subsequently ensnare them through magical gemstones or iron flasks. Within the elemental plane of earth, noble Dao hold dominion over the genie populace. They employ earth elementals, fellow Dao, Zorn, and other enslaved beings to extract precious gems, fulfilling their insatiable desire for such rich treasures. These esteemed genies possess a distinctive appearance, characterized by their bald, stout nature. Both genders adorn themselves with extravagant jewelry, including earrings, oversized necklaces, and turbans. Male noble Dao often fashion their beards and mustaches into elaborate styles. Their hands feature retractable, elongated fingernails crafted from pure metal, capable of piercing flesh and armor with ease. While some noble Dao derive pleasure from wanton destruction of property, the majority prefer to acquire or pilfer belongings through purchase or theft. They engage in combat only when assured of victory, relying on meticulous planning and strategic maneuvers. They wield a diverse range of magical abilities for both offense and defense. They possess immunity to all earth-based magic and maze spells, yet are notably vulnerable to holy water. The Neogi resemble spider-like beings and are known for their ruthless and xenophobic nature as slavers and plunderers, universally despised across various crystal spheres. They are small, with 8 legs, and adults are no larger than a small human child. Their heads possess reflective eyes atop elongated eel-like necks. Often likened to a hybrid of a wolf spider and an eel due to their hairy, flattened abdomens, Neogi are nonetheless warm-blooded. Additionally, they often adorn themselves by dyeing their fur and tattooing their bodies, either for decorative purposes or to denote family and rank. The Neogi possess an utterly alien personality, driven by their innate capacity for controlling others, which they view as a normal and acceptable practice. They lack comprehension of basic social norms observed by other humanoid species, operating under the assumption that individuals are inherently the property of others. For instance, Neogi crew members consider themselves the possession of their captain, yet they can also own slaves. Despite being regarded as a trading race, Neogi only resort to trade when unable to simply take what they desire. Viewing trading as just another aspect of their predatory nature, they exhibit remarkable cunning and deceitfulness in their transactions. When not serving their masters, they are free to pursue profitable ventures of their choosing. Even in business dealings, Neogi pose a significant threat due to their potential to enslave those they trade with, deterring all but the most desperate individuals from engaging with them. Nevertheless, their ability to navigate hostile environments and conduct business with races typically hostile to others grants them access to rare and valuable resources, making them sought after by greedy humanoids seeking profit. They are also known for establishing areas near Mind Flayer and Drow settlements in the Underdark. Neogi are exceedingly cautious, opting to avoid conflict unless presented with substantial opportunity for acquiring wealth or valuables. Recognizing their lack of ability in physical combat, they frequently employ their slaves to weaken their adversaries before engaging them themselves. They possess a natural poison that can be administered through their weapons or bites. Additionally, they possess the ability to mentally enslave other beings, rendering them compliant and responsive to commands for up to 24 hours, provided the Neogi remains in the general area of their victim. Reports indicate that Neogi occasionally utilize a psychic ability to induce pain and discomfort in combat, though its effectiveness appears to be restricted to targets within their line of sight. They navigate the Sea of Night aboard an imposing spider-shaped vessel known as a Death Spider, and occasionally lighter crafts called Mind Spiders. These ships, regardless of type, share a distinct spider-like design. Certain Neogi vessels possess the capability to traverse between different planes, referred to as so by their peers. These plane-traveling Neogi typically target Githyanki and Jinn vessels for predation. In departure from convention, Neogi spelljamming endeavors diverge from the norm by acquiring spelljamming helms through methods independent of the arcane. They either construct their own helms or obtain them through undisclosed means. Some Neogi utilize starry compasses, magical devices akin to crowns of the stars, enabling conventional seafaring crafts from Toril to ascend from water and navigate the Sea of Night. Umber hulks frequently accompany Neogi as slaves, tasked with physical labor such as ship construction and combat. Each Neogi typically possesses at least one Umber hulk slave, which they esteem above other enslaved species, often regarded as mere sustenance. They communicate through a complex language called Kazjakan, characterized by its abundance of sibilants. Regarding reproduction, they lack biological sexes or genders, instead undergoing a unique asexual reproductive cycle. At the end of an individual's lifespan, as signs of mental decline manifest, other adult Neogi inject a poisonous secretion, transforming the aging individual into a massive creature known as a Great Old Master. This creature loses all prior intelligence and autonomy, existing solely to consume. The other Neogi hunt to feed the Great Old Master and lay eggs upon it. After a 2-month period, the eggs hatch, and the newborn Neogi feed on the Great Old Master and on each other until only the strongest few survive. Neogi spellcasters tap into magic through pacts forged with elder evils such as Akamar, Kaifon, Gibbeth, and Hadar, encountered during their spacefaring journeys. These entities serve as mentors, guiding the Neogi in the art of warlock pacts. Spellcasters within the Neogi ranks have developed and adapted spells to better suit their needs. Some spells like Venom Bite and Arachnophobia aim to slow and terrify adversaries, while the Identify Race spell aids in locating potential slaves on new worlds. In combat, the Lethal Hatchling spell injects victims with Neogi eggs capable of hatching and consuming the host from within. Certain Neogi have crafted unique magical items, including the protective charm of distraction, as well as the functional bands of the serpent and bands of the arachnid, establishing wearers to transform into their namesakes, among other abilities. An arcane ritual allows Neogi to create undead hulks, undead versions of Umber hulks, assembled from various Umber hulk body parts. For their religion, Neogi hold an unconventional view of their deities, demanding favors and boons rather than offering prayers or sacrifices. They regard their deities as servants of the Neogi race, with powers reflecting the sexless nature of the Neogi themselves. Incorrectly speaking a deity's name is considered sacrilegious by their kind and is punishable by a slow and agonizing death. Given the complexities of the Neogi language for other races, it is advisable to avoid attempting to pronounce the names of their deities. The Neogi pantheon comprises several entities. Kajak-Ixel is the deceased god of creation. Kil'lix is a chaotic evil lesser deity associated with death, murder, and poison. Kurtux is a chaotic evil deity of war, brutality, and strength. Paka is a lawful evil lesser deity of fear and tyranny. Thrigki is a neutral evil deity associated with love, which in human terms translates more closely to envy and jealousy. Tzenkil is a neutral evil lesser deity associated with torture, pain, and suffering. According to Neogi legends, their origins trace back to a distant world referred to as Kajaks. In antiquity, they abandoned their native planet and subjugated another inhabited by Umber hulks, utilizing them as slaves to construct their spell-jamming fleet and expand across the primaterial plane. Their extensive travels through space have led some scholars to speculate that their homeworld may no longer exist. Some suggest that the Neogi may be responsible for the creation of Grey Renders. During the mid-14th century, the Neogi established a base on Journey's Leg, an asteroid within the Tears of Selûne. Most Neogi incursions into realm space originate from this location. Their presence in Kryn space is notably scarce, attributed to a conflict with the Spelljammer that nearly decimated their fleet before the 13th century. As of the late 15th century, their Spelljammers continued to be utilized, with some Neogi factions involved in their construction and maintenance. Even before exploring what brutality passes for civilization in the Underdark, threats to those traversing, or merely attempting to survive it, are countless and uniquely deadly. There's not only a strange environment, with flora and fauna uniquely adapted to the harsh conditions, but a deeply hostile one. Survival requires not only a comprehensive knowledge of these threats, but a keen awareness of the shifting geography of the caves and the allegiances of their inhabitants. However, finding a being with such knowledge who will serve as a trustworthy guide through this place will prove challenging, as most of the intelligent beings who find it familiar seek to either enslave or consume all before them. Yet on occasion, the threats of this subterranean realm erupt onto the surface, requiring those brave or foolhardy enough to venture into the dangers of the Underdark.